The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The season, the 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great. Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. I kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, we are off and rolling here on a Friday. By the way, over under, how long into the season before we get the soundbite of Elliot saying the season, the 2025 season is over? I'm hoping that that's not until, well, I'm hoping that, World Series, but, whatever, that's wishful thinking. But like, what was September? October? I mean, what are we thinking, Elliot? When do you think that quote will be dropped?
Instead of when we get it, we should put the line at how many times the season ends and comes back.
Yeah, I think that's a better question because I will say it once in April.
Right, of course.
I will say it once in April.
If they lose on opening day, the season.
If they lose 2 of their first 3 series, the season is over.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
There's no coming back from that.
Unless they do.
Unless, of course, they win.
Right.
A couple more.
But we're coming out swinging. Hope everyone's having a good start to your Friday. Happy Friday again off the bench. Justin Kinner, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett. Guys, good morning. Elle, are we having a better start to the day today than yesterday?
Elle.
There's no Bearcats on last night, so I would assume so.
Elle is a new one. You haven't called me Elle before, I don't think. Have you called me Elle before?
I don't think so.
No, but it sounds cool. Like, what
You're
up, Elle?
trying it out.
I like Elle.
I like it.
I would say it's a little bit of a better morning than what I had yesterday, so I'm ready to roll. I'm all good. Had a great night last night, and we're here today on a Friday, heading into the weekend.
What about you, Ja? How we doing today?
I'm good. I wish it would warm up a little bit, both outside and in our wonderful studio. But yeah, it's all right. I have my jacket over there for as soon as the show ends.
That's
Throw
right.
that sucker on because it's just as cold in here as it is outside. Not quite, but close.
52 degrees.
Well, I started the day sending an email to our engineer complaining about why our building is so cold. And then I got him in trouble, and I was just being a negative person, complaining about how miserable it is in this building. And then I found out that yesterday, when I was hot doing the show, I had cracked the window open. I left the window open for the entire afternoon, evening, night, and into the morning. So I created a lot of chaos today. I got a lot of coworkers, screamed at and yelled at, and it was me. But I have not told anybody that it was me yet.
That's
I have
good.
Yet
Do not tell anybody.
High character, actions by me.
I hope they're watching.
I hope they're not. Listen, go all day. Go all day. Nobody has to know. You can escape this.
Well, it's even worse because it's his off day. He's off today.
Oh.
And, it's not. Yeah. But at this point, I'm like, at what point do I just say, yeah, by the way, I left the window open, my bad. I'm just still pretending it's cold here just so that it feels like it's someone else's fault. Good stuff. I mean, again, this is the most Friday start to the show ever. Should have known. But either way, all right, let's see what is on the docket for today. Oh, yeah, the Four Nations face-off. We're going to get to that in a moment. Somehow the build-up to last night's matchup and really just all the hype and the coverage of the Four Nations face-off somehow turned into the NHL against the NBA. Somehow it just turned into hockey against LeBron James. Somehow I'm not really sure how that necessarily worked out, but we'll get to that coming up. Major League Baseball and ESPN, a divorce is looming, and baseball and Rob Manfred's reasoning is kind of weird, and we'll talk about that coming up in a moment. Charlie Goldsmith put out an interesting piece regarding Nick Martinez. Yesterday, all of us, we put out a couple names of underrated Reds that we thought, should get more attention heading into the season, that we think are going to have a big impact, that maybe aren't getting the attention they deserve. He had some interesting things to say about Nick Martinez that maybe we should have had him on our list. We'll get to that around the corner. Plus, Hunter Green, he's coming into camp. By the way, so many guys are coming into camp in the best shape of their lives. I never know what to make of that. It's better than hearing that they're injured, I guess. But what's the ceiling for Hunter Green in 2025? How much of an improvement can we expect from him, and how does he stack up against not just the top pitchers in baseball, but one of the top pitchers in the NL Central? We got that coming up for you as well. So we got a busy show today, but before we go any further, let's send it to our guy, L, for Elliot's headlines.
Thank you.
Watch it.
That's right. We do bring you Elliot's headlines.
I always forget there's a button over here for it, so I go try to find it.
Oh,
That's
so
a
you
little
don't-
inside
you don't
baseball
even
for everyone.
You don't even hit the
I
button?
forget about the button about twice a week.
That's very funny. All right, NBA. Lakers, they bounce back with a 110-102 win over the Trail Blazers. LeBron tallied his second 40-plus point game at age 40, and Luka did not play. The Spurs beat the Suns 120-109 without Wemby. Victor Wembanyama, he is done for the remainder of the regular season with a shoulder injury, so the Spurs will have to try to fight without him.
Well, hold up. There's more to that. There's like potential blood clot issues, like some of the issues that led to Chris Bosh having to retire from the NBA. They're trying to make it sound like it's not a big deal, a big concern, but these are a lot of the same concerns that led to Chris Bosh's career coming short. That would be so devastating, not just to the Spurs, but to the NBA as a whole, because LeBron's 40-plus years old, the face of the league. Steph Curry's up there in age. Kevin Durant's up there in age. It's going to be a new era of the NBA, and he's supposed to be the face of that. That's something to keep an eye on. No one's rooting for that at all. But it's a little bit more than just a slight shoulder injury, and I'm hoping that's the max of the severity of it, to be honest.
Jokic had 29 points, 17 boards, 9 assists in the Nuggets blowout win over the Hornets. The Bucks, they get a win over the Clippers, a 116-110. Bobby Portis of the Bucks has been suspended 25 games for violating the NBA's anti-drug policy. The Cleveland Cavaliers, they take care of the Nets 110-97. Jarrett Allen, 16 points and 20 rebounds, 16 and 20. Donovan Mitchell led all scorers with 26 points. As we've already mentioned, the Four Nations final, Team Canada, they took down the United States last night in overtime. Connor McDavid hit the game winner in OT. 3-2, the final score. For the Four Nations final.
Extremely reminiscent of 2010. The U.S. beat Canada in the group stage and then lost in the final on a Sidney Crosby overtime goal. Connor McDavid, we're going to have to deal with him for a long time. We beat Canada when they didn't have Cale Makar the first time, and we didn't let them use it as an excuse. So, as Wes Miller said, I'm not an excuse guy, not going to give excuses, but I do have a few.
But here's
Matthew Tkachuk got hurt early in the game. He got pulled on Wednesday night. He didn't even dress on Saturday night after the Canada game, and then he got pulled after just 6 minutes of ice time. He's one of the best players on the team.
Yeah.
Losing him and already an uphill fight to beat Team Canada, that's going to be tough. And then Charlie McAvoy, the best defender, one of the best defenders in the NHL, out with a shoulder injury. We talked about it yesterday, the Bruins players. So the U.S. was significantly injured there, but congrats to Canada for winning this, fake All-Star tournament no one cares about.
The booing, I will say, there was no real boos last night. No boos for the Canadian national anthem. I did think the American national anthem was pretty sick. They had the whole arena, and they didn't allow anybody to have an opportunity to boo. The entire arena sang along to the national anthem, so that was pretty cool.
Some would say we're back, baby. That's what some would say.
Full band national anthems. More full band national anthems. It doesn't just have to be college football. You get a full band out there, it's 10 times better. That was great.
Way better. Spring training. How about that? It started yesterday. The Cubs, they beat the Dodgers in the first spring training game of the year, 12-4. Doesn't matter, but 12-4. Bobby Miller. I was gonna say Bobby Miller did take a comebacker off the dome pretty early on in that game, so that's scary stuff.
We talk about it with the Reds a ton, but that's the worry about watching the rest of the league too. I mean, you don't want to see any stars get hurt in spring training. Not that Bobby Miller's necessarily a superstar, but still, to see guys that are relatively known get hurt in spring training, that's so brutal, because that's what you want to watch in the regular season. You want to watch the best players play baseball.
The comebacker to a pitcher has to be one of the scarier injuries in professional sports.
I'd figure more guys would wear the helmet. I know it looks stupid, but
are you talking about like the softball thing with the cage?
Little half
or are you talking about the helmet?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but a lot of the time it's just hitting face. There's nothing
you can do unless you wear the full cage.
And it's coming 120 off the bat. Yeah, it's terrible. And as Kinner mentioned, MLB Sunday Night Baseball, no more. They have opted out of the deals through the 26 through 28 season. So they'll have Sunday Night Baseball this year. After that, we're taking a break. But those are your headlines.
Yankees beards.
I did have that. Did I not read that? The Yankees have officially amended the no beard rule. Well-groomed beards are now allowed for the New York Yankees. How about that?
This comes roughly 3 days after the Yankees players reported to spring training where they were required to be clean-shaven.
Damn.
So
Quick
Devin
change of
Williams,
mind.
yeah,
Quick
Devin
change of
Williams
mind.
traded from the Brewers to the Yankees this offseason, talked a lot about how he wasn't going to shave his beard until the last moment because he's had it for 8 years. He doesn't like his face clean shaven, but he showed up at Yankee Spring Training clean shaven.
Damn.
About 72 hours later, don't need to be.
Oh, brutal.
Yankees a little late to the party on that. I think
Yeah.
they were the last remaining professional franchise that had that mandate in place. But I didn't even realize that was still a thing. Like, everybody has facial hair now. Like, I just feel like I can't believe they've gone that long with not getting away with it, but without players really truly complaining to the max. But either way, not a big deal. But they could have made that announcement a little sooner, like you guys mentioned. I'd be pissed if I shaved my face right before that and then they, change it after. But either way, those were what's that?
I was gonna say that seems like a nonsense rule. Like, that's a rule.
Crazy
like,
rule.
I mean, there's a dollar sign where I'm like, yeah, I'm obviously gonna shave my beard for $25 million a year. But like, there's got to be a number where it's like, all right, I really don't want to shave this beard every single day.
Take a discount for facial hair?
Yeah, I think there's a facial hair discount out there on the major league market that teams haven't tapped into yet.
I like that.
Or at least a tax. Like, okay, I'm gonna keep my facial hair, and there's like a fee that you have to pay. To
That would
keep
be
it.
good. Yeah,
That would be good.
Just something. But either way, all right. Off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Justin Kinner, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here. We'll step away for a few moments, and we'll have more on that Four Nations face-off from last night, Canada over the U.S. Why was this such a big deal this week? What led to all of a sudden hockey just being at the forefront of all of the sports conversation out there? We'll get to that. Plus, it somehow turned into, wow, this has been so fun to watch, and it's LeBron's fault why the NBA sucks. Somehow it turned into that, and I don't get it. We'll discuss when we come back. More off the bench when we return. No, I'm serious. It's him. If I'm ever missing, that's what it is. It is what it is. I have let the authorities know who the number one name at the top of the list is. Either way, but we welcome you back off the bench.
The list. There's a lot of list talk over the last couple of weeks.
There's a list.
Oh, that's the top 10 quarterbacks and all that.
Maybe.
That list.
Maybe.
That's
Maybe.
for July.
That'd be
That's
a
for
better
July.
list.
All right, let's get to it. So the Four Nations face-off last, there was a lot of build-up to it. Now that the U.S. lost, now like Jacob joked earlier, it's a nothing burger. It was just it's a meaningless little exhibition tournament in the middle of the season for no apparent reason. But no thoughts on it. To be honest, I'm not a big hockey guy. I don't follow hockey. I don't dislike it. It's just, it's, ever one of those sports you wish you can get into. That's it for me. Like, I try to get into it. I just can't. Soccer, I've tried to get into. I can't really get into it. But there was a buzz about this this week. It started with the first time these two teams squared off earlier in the week. But why was this such a big deal? Why did this dominate pretty much every major sports talk show out there this week?
I think the timing was really big. Super Bowl football ends, and you need something to watch. I mean, I know a lot of people, especially in our chat, are huge college basketball fans, but that's not really an all year round thing for most people in the country. And I think to have something where you don't have to follow it like the NHL and have a team you're rooting for. We're American. We root for USA. The Canadians are going to root for Canada. I think it was just very easy to get into, root for your country, have fun, and I think everyone kind of realized how awesome hockey is to watch. I mean, everyone that I know that's not a big hockey guy that watched, last night or the first time against Canada, they've said those were awesome games, super fun to watch. Maybe try to watch some more of the NHL. So I think even outside of just having a great tournament, I think they did a really good job of growing the game, getting some more eyes on it, getting a lot more interest in hockey overall.
I think there's also been some other stuff that don't involve sports that might have influenced, the passion for these two countries going up against each other too. So there was a lot going on, and also at the same time, you lose football, NBA is taking a break, and you have all this coming together for a perfect storm of let's just root for Team USA. Everybody roots for Team USA, so let's just do it. And clearly this event worked. They're going to probably continue it. The only negative about it is that if guys get injured, obviously you lose out on an NHL season, which is brutal. But obviously I think they care in hockey. I think you care more about playing for your country than you do for your NHL team.
It seems that way.
I can't speak for everybody on that one, but I think that...
the fact that guys are battling through injuries for the first year of a new tournament just to wear the USA jersey, it feels like that would be the sentiment.
Feels like that's the case. And I think it's, a collection of, well, we hate the NBA All-Star Game. Nobody tries. And you go to ESPN and it's like, all right, well, now it's awesome because these guys are out there trying, fighting for their countries. It's all of it coming together, right? And I think it was the perfect storm.
Mouse Cop says, can we just admit that it's 50 times less big if the final isn't USA and Canada? Yeah, I don't think anyone's acting like it would be as big if it was Finland, Sweden.
Correct.
USA, Canada playing first and then playing a second time after we already saw the 3 fights in 9 seconds. We had all the talk afterwards, everything that came with that game. To have them play a second time, that absolutely makes it bigger. And I think that was part of why they chose these 4 countries. Yep. If you put Russia in there, which I know there's other things going on there, but if you put Russia in there, there's no guarantee the U.S. plays Canada again. I think this was, the overwhelming favorite for the championship when they started this tournament was that USA and Canada would play in the championship, and that's obviously what they got, and it delivered beyond expectation, and it was billed to be incredible, and it was.
Yeah, and hockey got a lot of coverage this week. Obviously, we're curious to see how many fans that tuned in passionately for this, you carry those fans to the back half of the season? Does it help grow the sport? I think it doesn't hurt the sport by any means. Does it help grow it? I don't know how much more it'll grow. Hockey is just such a weird sport because it's not like there's empty arenas throughout the sport. It's not like they're struggling to get people to go watch the game. There are people who are passionate about their NHL teams. It just doesn't seem to resonate as a big, TV viewership draw at the end of the day. So it is interesting. Like, it's not that no one cares about hockey. There are tons of people who care about hockey. It just doesn't seem to resonate to a big TV draw at the end of the day.
People that love hockey might love hockey more than fans of any sport love their sport.
And
I can get in on that. Yeah.
They love hockey, and I think that's why it's so easy to get in and root for it, because you just see everyone around you how much they love the sport, how much the players respect the sport and care about the sport as a whole, and I think that's just something that's easy to root for.
We were talking about it earlier. I've been to only 2 NHL games. Those atmospheres are some of the best sports atmospheres you can go to. Like, it's so much fun, and I don't think it translates to TV, the in-game experience, to the sitting on the couch watching at home experience. If you've never been, it's absolutely worth your time, and it's a fun experience. I think soccer's kind of the same way too. I went to the FC playoff game with Casey and Swaggy Plague. Shout out Swaggy, and that atmosphere was awesome. As somebody who doesn't really like soccer, there's something about just getting out there and cheering with a group of people that makes it way better, way better.
No, and I've heard that. I've never been to an FC Cincinnati match before, but I have heard the atmosphere there is like an experience. Like, going to a game there is an experience, especially when obviously they're good and there's high expectations and all that. I've heard nothing but great things. I've been to a few Columbus Blue Jackets games. I remember when they made the playoffs years ago when they beat Boston. And there was a buzz throughout. I mean, like, non-hockey fans were becoming hockey fans just because the energy was kind of just feeding off to everybody else. I thought that was pretty cool. But again, Columbus, the Blue Jackets haven't really been that relevant since then when it's all said and done. But no, so hockey was at the forefront of all the conversation this week. And then instead of it just being about hockey, it went into why hockey is better than the NBA. And some people may believe that, and that's fine. Look, we all have our preferences for our sports, but all of a sudden it wasn't just that people were beating up the NBA. All of a sudden it was LeBron being beat up, and it was Kevin Durant and Steph Curry being beat up, and I don't understand why. So very popular NHL analyst, and I always butcher his name, so my apologies, but PK Subban was just doing his rounds across like First Take and all the ESPN radio shows this week. does a great job. He gets you excited about hockey. Like, I was locked in on all the hockey coverage this week. I think he does a great job. But it seemed like he was taking some big-time shots at LeBron James, which was kind of strange to me, even though he never mentions LeBron James' name directly, technically. Take a look. He had this to say about why the NHL, why it is better than the NBA. Do you agree? Take a listen.
In terms of the money, you're probably right. There is a lot of money. But once again, I ask the question, what are you playing for? Like, if you're really about it, if you're really about sports, then you're about two things, your teammates and the fans. And I'm sorry, it doesn't matter how much money you're making. When you do not show up to play, you're letting your teammates down. When you do not show up to play, you're letting the fans down that are paying you 40, 50, 60 million. I don't care if you're getting 300 million. Congratulations. But these people in here are paying $2,500 a ticket, $5,000, that are blue-collared, hard-working people. If you don't get your head wrapped around that, you shouldn't be in pro sports. Because how are we going to grow? How do we expect you to be an example? Well, guess what? You don't want to be? You are one. You're on the biggest stage. You just said it. They make the most money. You're an example. You got to show up. You got to take that on. I'm sick and tired of making athletes greats, all-time greats, that aren't the best examples. Those are the people that we want our kids to follow, that we want athletes to follow. That helps us in our game. Stephen A., you want athletes to be educated on this and understand this. They got to understand the importance of showing up to the All-Star game and being on the court. And playing banged up sometimes. And playing injured maybe at times. Thank you. And participating, because here's the thing. Because you're making 100, 200, 300 million, you should be out there banged up. You should be. That's why we pay you, is to max out. We talk about greatness and it being the longevity of somebody's career. I don't care if you play 50 years. I want your best 10. I want you on the court dominating. I want you to go all out. I want Michael Jordan. I want Kobe. That's what I want in every sport. That's the guy that I follow. If you're a different version than that, you don't get my respect.
All right. So lots to unpack there. Let's start with where he initially started out with how much money the athletes make, and they need to be difference between injured and hurt, and you got to play through being hurt. Let's start with that. That I 100% agree with. That is the big knock on the NBA. But at the same time, we could sit here and prop up NHL players for being tougher than NBA players, and prop up NHL players because they play through their, while being banged up and all this. But at the same time, if that's what fans truly wanted, then why isn't the NHL a bigger draw? We just got done talking about it's very popular amongst its fans in its circles, but overall, it's not a major TV draw. It's not a major brand like the NFL, the NBA, college football, and some of the others. So I get his point. I want my NBA players to be tougher as well. I want them to play through being banged up, but at the same time, it's like, well, while you're praising the NHL for all of that, it's not like that's resonating to all of a sudden the sport just taking over the country and being the most popular sport out there. It just isn't.
I think all the stuff that comes with what he's saying is exactly what the negatives against basketball are. If your stars cared about the game of basketball more than they cared about, the contracts and the supermaxes and everything else, I think they would care about an All-Star game, and then they wouldn't rest for 30 games in an 82-game season. Like, I think all that stuff comes from exactly what he's saying there. NHL players care about hockey. They want to advance the game. They hear there's a new tournament with two different, countries playing each other, 4 different countries playing each other, U.S. versus Canada in the championship, and they just want to win the game. These guys were saying Matthew Tkachuk played in the Stanley Cup Final, Game 7 last year. He said last night's game was bigger than that one. This tournament was made up.
Yeah.
Like, they just care about the sport. They care about whatever they're doing, whatever jersey they're wearing. They're going to play as hard as they can, and that just doesn't translate to the NBA. And I think that's where, though NHL doesn't necessarily resonate with everyone, I think that's just because hockey's not as big of a sport. I think the reason why it's so easy to latch onto and why everyone watches, or more people watch the Stanley Cup playoffs, and everyone watched the last 2 games of U.S. and Canada, is because you want to root for stuff like that. You want to turn on the TV and see guys that care about it as much as you, the fans, do. And it seems like in hockey, every single one of them cares about it more than the last. So I think that's why it's so easy to latch onto hockey, and that's what he's saying. You'd have more support around the NBA if the guys cared about the sport more.
I also don't think sports in general, it should be all about like being the number one sport. Like the NFL is the number one sport in this country, and it's not remotely close. That's what it is. Outside of that, I think it's college football next. And like if you're the NHL or the NBA, like you don't have to, in my opinion, like you don't have to go out and chase the NFL. I don't know what you're trying to do if you're going out and trying to be, I guess, the number one sport and proving a point. We all grew up probably playing a lot of football in this country, a lot of basketball in this country. There weren't that many hockey teams around me when I was growing up. So I never had the opportunity. My parents never played hockey. There's a lot of people out there that never played hockey, but the people that do love their sport and they watch their sport and they have the following and they get a decent enough views. So I don't think it's like when we bring in like the TV ratings and stuff, sure it matters to a point, but like I don't think it should be like the number one end all be all comparison between leagues, right? I do think there are better products with less amount of views. I think you can have that, and I think that the NHL has done a pretty damn good job at keeping a loyal fan base over the past, 25, 35, 40 years compared to other leagues. I think other leagues, you drop off, you stop watching. There was a point where a lot of people just stopped watching the NFL for some reason. There was a lot of people that stopped watching the NBA. There's a lot of people just stopped watching it over the past 5 years or so, right? And then you have the NHL who's maintained a loyal base. So you're right, NHL is not the biggest sport, but I would say, if you go by just an overall standard of what it is to be a good league, I think the NHL's lived up to that in its entirety.
And then the second half to his rant regarding, he doesn't care about longevity. Give me your best 10. I don't know about you guys, but I felt like there were just direct strays being aimed at LeBron James. And I know LeBron James is not.
Definitely was.
Oh, no doubt. And it doesn't make any sense because this idea that LeBron is the face of the movement of players who don't give a damn, I don't understand when he became the face of that, because the one that you can complain about LeBron all you want, but the guy plays. He's out there. He played in 70-plus games last year. He's only missed 4 games this year. All right, these are talking about year 20 and 21 in the league. He's 39 and 40 years old during this stretch. He played in 70-plus games last year. He's only missed 4 games this season. Why is LeBron constantly being blamed for the players who don't want to go out there and play? He was taking, like when you think of Steph Curry and you think of, Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant, when his leg snapped in two, yes, missed a lot of games, but Kevin Durant plays. Steph Curry plays. LeBron plays. The era of players, or the group of players that seems to bring it, that gives everybody else a bad rap, it's the Kawhi Leonard, which in his defense, to a certain extent, a lot of it is because of those injuries that he is constantly battling through. But a lot of times he's not injured. He's just not playing to prevent getting injured, which frustrates a lot of people. James Harden sits out and misses a lot of games, but when he plays is very good, of course. Obviously, Joel Embiid, I think, is the face of all of the problems when it comes to this, where he's just not playing in any games and has basically come out and said, I will never play in, back-to-back games. It's all about being fresh for the playoffs down the stretch, not putting any value into the regular season. I mean, everyone loves Luka and is just surprised that Dallas moved on from Luka, but let's be clear, Luka is a fun player to watch, but he doesn't value being in shape. He doesn't value taking his job serious enough to make sure he's readily available to be out there. He hasn't been readily available for the Lakers since arriving there, which all the complaints about him in Dallas seem to be coming to fruition in LA in the very early goings. I'm just tired of LeBron catching strays for all of that stuff because LeBron plays. LeBron's constantly out there. There's all the narratives that, man, they need to bench him and rest him because of his age and all this. He doesn't allow that to happen. He's still one of the most dominating players in the NBA, nearly averaging a triple-double. So why he's catching strays is just absolutely insane. He's not the one missing games. He's not the one that is pushing for load management or anything. It's the other stars that are, but those stars no one gives a damn about. LeBron getting blamed for that is absolutely insane to me.
No, you're absolutely right. And everyone points to the dunk contest, how LeBron didn't do the dunk contest in his prime, and that's why it's a nothing burger now. Well, Kobe won the dunk contest in, 97? Kobe won the dunk contest in 1997. They canceled it for the next 3 years because the 97 dunk contest was viewed as the worst dunk contest ever. They put a WNBA skills challenge in there. There was a lockout mixed in there. They did away with the dunk contest for 3 years because it was so bad. And there's a superstar winning it. So I don't think that really changes anything. I think the NBA as a whole has a problem with the All-Star Weekend, and the problem comes back to nothing more than the players not caring about the sport of basketball. They care about cashing contracts. They care about winning championships. That's it. They don't care about playing basketball and furthering the game, and that's why there's a disconnect between non-NBA fans and the NBA. Obviously, there's a big group of fans that love the NBA. There's a lot of them here in the chat that absolutely love the NBA and they defend it every day. But I think the people that don't adore the NBA are getting further and further from it and attaching themselves more to college basketball than we've ever seen before, because those players care and those players try really, really hard night in and night out, and you just don't get the same thing in, the regular season of the NBA.
Yeah, again, it's unfortunate that we have to have this conversation, because I don't like to just say nobody cares and nobody's trying. That's not why we watch sports. It's just not true, really. I mean, the NBA, it's the league itself has a lot of issues. Yes. And the league itself is responsible for that. The Adam Silvers of the world, right? The people in charge of the league, those are the people responsible for the effort problem, if you want to call it that, the all-star problem, the pro or whatever, the all-star game problem, the dunk contest problem. There's people in charge that are not doing a good enough job in the NBA, and I think that's why it's a talking point. There's a lot of NBA players that are trying out there. There's a lot of NBA players that probably could try a little bit harder. I think there's players in the NFL that could probably try harder. I think there's players in every league. I just think it's maximized in the NBA for some reason. And as we get further down this complaining wagon, more people jump on it, right? The more and more people, the more and more you see ESPN and First Take just absolutely killing the NBA. When you see guys in the NBA killing the NBA is what's killing it.
Stars of the past kill the current NBA.
I mean, Draymond Green's going on TV saying how nobody cares. Like it's that.
Chuck and Shaq talk about how soft the bigs are now every single time they get a chance.
It's difficult to not say it when that's the narrative that the players of the league are saying. Like that's what all of this is. So, you don't really see that in other leagues. You don't see any Major League Baseball players come out on TV and say nobody's trying, how the game's not what it was 25 years ago. You don't see it in the NFL where nobody's trying. They do say it's not like it was 25 years ago because it was tougher back then. You don't see it in hockey. Nobody cares. Like the NBA is the only one that's coming out and saying that, where they're outwardly saying there's not effort. And that's why the narrative happens. It's spewed everywhere, and now we talk about it here on this show.
And there's people in the chat saying they care in the playoffs, they care in the finals, LeBron cared in the Olympics. All of that stuff is true, and I think that's why I get even more upset about this, because when they do care and they're all playing as hard as they can, it's an awesome product. The NBA playoffs rock. The finals are so much fun. The Olympics were incredible. Why can't we get that for the regular season? Why can't people play hard? The NFL regular season, those games are awesome week in and week out. The players are trying. They look like they're, giving it everything they have. I know it's more often. There's more nights, obviously 82 games for 17, but shorten the season then if you can't try for 82 games. We need to get a system out here where the players feel like they can try for the entirety of the season, because if they can't, then what's the point of it?
Yeah, Elliot, that was a good point about former NBA players just do nothing. But there's no other sport where the sport's past just does everything they can to crap on the current product. Now, there are a lot of things about the current product that deserve it, but at the same time, when you hear interviews of former baseball greats, they marvel over how great the players of today are. Right? Like, you don't hear too many former baseball players that are just ripping today's players. Same thing in the NFL. Now, there might be some that say, well, Tom Brady's great, but he's not my GOAT. Or Patrick Mahomes, he's fantastic. I still wouldn't put him in the GOAT category. That's one thing. But, there are former NBA players who do everything they can to disparage any record that is broken today, any accomplishment that is checked off today. Every star today, they're lesser than because they didn't play back when it was tougher back during the old days and all this stuff. It's so frustrating. But either way, the NBA has a lot of problems. But I just couldn't believe LeBron was catching strays. LeBron, of all the things you can complain about LeBron with, giving a damn, I think is kind of silly to say that. And if people that were mad because he didn't play in the All-Star game, all fans do is say, well, no one cares about the All-Star game. The All-Star game stinks. But you want him to go out there and care about it when nobody else does? That's just weird to me. But
the fix to the All-Star game is just stop.
If they took it away, would you care? I wouldn't.
No,
I agree.
No, of course nobody would care.
We spend 10 times as much time arguing about whether it's good or bad or how to fix it than anyone does watching it anyway. I mean,
I think every All-Star game's a joke. So
There's no reason to have it.
I don't like. That's why I don't really weigh too much into any of this, because I don't think the public cares either. That's why the players don't care. The public doesn't care about the NBA All-Star game when they're trying their hardest. So it's like, what do you want them to do? I get it. They're getting paid $100 million, so maybe they should care. I understand all of it. All I know is that, as we continue on with is the NBA trying? It's the game changes, especially in basketball. It's changed so much. You say the NBA doesn't play any defense. 113 points teams are scoring on average this year, right? And obviously teams were scoring a lot less 10 years ago. In 2010, teams were scoring 99, and in the early 2000s, teams were scoring 92 points a game. Then you go back to the 80s, and what do you see? Teams are scoring 110, 113 again. So that's like, it's an ever changing landscape. So there's like ebbs and flows with it, and I don't think you have to just sit here and complain nonstop about the NBA, because when the playoffs come, you're getting good basketball. Like, that's at least the way I look at it. The league allows 20-something playoff teams into their postseason. Like, that goes into the load management stuff too. It's a league problem. It's not a player's problem.
By the way, last night, LeBron, little 40 burger, dropped 40 at 40.
Past
Not
Michael
bad for a
Jordan
bum.
most
That's right.
40-point games after 40.
GOAT. That's my GOAT.
Turned 40 like last month.
Interesting. I don't care about longevity. I just care about your 10 best. Selective. You're being very selective there. Smart.
Pick any of LeBron's 10. They're the best 10.
I mean, take LeBron's best 10 versus Michael's best 10. Michael's going to have a lot of high score. I mean, the guy that is the better scorer, the better passer, the better rebounder, bigger, stronger. It's just simple at this point. But anyways, all right. Off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Let's talk a little Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball on ESPN, a divorce is coming. This will be the last season of Major League Baseball games on ESPN, at least unless something changes. But the reasoning for it, found it kind of interesting, and we'll discuss that when we come back. More Off the Bench when we return. All right, and we are back off the bench. Justin Kenner, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here. I know during headlines we mentioned the fact that the Yankees have made a change to their policy regarding facial hair. You're now allowed to have facial hair. But some stories being shared on social media. A funny story about, obviously, Steinbrenner back in the day was very strict on this, no facial hair whatsoever. Well, Lou Piniella tried to argue this point, basically saying Jesus Christ had long hair and a beard. Why can't we have beards and long hair? The Yankees owner showed him a small pond beyond the outfield fence. He goes, "You see that pond? Walk across the pond and you can have a beard and long hair." So I thought that was a pretty good comeback.
That plays.
My assumption is he cannot walk across the pond. That's
not.
my guess. Either way. All right. We welcome you back again off the bench. Major League Baseball, it was announced yesterday that this is going to be the last year that you'll be able to watch MLB on ESPN. No more Sunday Night Baseball. After this upcoming season, of course, we talked Sunday Night Baseball a while back when the schedule came out. We were surprised that there were no Ellie De La Cruz, no Cincinnati Reds in that lineup, of course. But some of the reasonings for why this is happening, again, the sports landscape is always changing. It's always evolving. But ESPN and Major League Baseball kind of branching away from one another is interesting. Rob Manfred kind of let it be known that he was not pleased with the lack of publicity that ESPN, in regards to focusing on baseball during a lot of their lineup shows throughout the day. The attention that the NBA gets on First Take and gets on all the sports radio shows and talk shows throughout the day. Rob Manfred kind of frustrated that, that baseball is not more of a center focus on those shows. And my complaint and problem with this is ESPN doesn't dictate the content on the stations. We do. The people that tune in. I shared the story a couple years ago. I got to go to New York, and Bobby Carpenter was working for First Take at the time, or he was doing ESPN's Get Up in the morning and First Take. So I met him in New York. I got to go sit in the studio and watch the tapings of First Take and Get Up. And they literally have a monitor there that every topic that they are talking about, they are stretching out that as long as the number hits a certain point or stays at a certain level, they're going to remain on that topic. And they have a ton of segments planned, but they, of course, throw everything against the wall, and whatever the viewers are gravitating towards, that's where they stay. So it's not ESPN just forcing topics that you don't want to hear about down your throat. We are dictating what we want to tune in and listen to, what we want to tune in and watch. So it drives me nuts. I remember when the WNBA, they were throwing their temper tantrum about how come we're not getting the same coverage as the NBA. It's because when they did, and this isn't a women's sports thing, so no one needs to twist it into that. This is just a common sense thing. When they would start to focus on the WNBA, people would tune out. They wouldn't listen. They wouldn't, keep it locked on their television because they just didn't care. The NBA, it's not like, we're going to talk NBA a lot, and that's how people are going to care about it. They talked a lot about the NBA because people cared about it. These shows talk a lot about the Dallas Cowboys because people care about the Dallas Cowboys. These shows take shots at your Cincinnati Bengals because if they praise your Cincinnati Bengals, it doesn't draw a lot of people in. But if they take a shot at your Cincinnati Bengals, everyone comes out and is defending their team, and they're tuning in, and there's that engagement there. Everything is based on those numbers. It has nothing to do with, maybe if you talked about us more people would like our product. It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. It never has. It never will. And the WNBA frustrated me with that too, because maybe our sport would have grown if you guys would have given us the same attention as the men. That's not how it works. The only reason people like Caitlin Clark is because you talk about her. You didn't talk about anyone else, because when they would talk about anybody else, no one paid attention. You talk about Caitlin Clark, that's the draw. Now they're going to talk about women's basketball a lot more moving forward because there is a draw. So for Rob Manfred to come out and is frustrated that baseball doesn't get the same attention and coverage that all the other sports do, despite their media rights deal, similar to the NBA's and NFL and others, I think he's missing it on this one. I'm a big supporter of Rob Manfred. I actually think he does a very good job. I think he's a very underrated commissioner of all the professional sports commissioners out there. But I think he's missing it on this one. Baseball's biggest problem is the only time that they are nationally relevant is when there's a scandal. When there's teams banging on trash cans to cheat, baseball's talked about every station, every TV station across the country. When there's a steroid scandal, that's when we talk about baseball, right? When there is there's goop on the ball and all these pitchers have been caught cheating. Now we're all talking about it, right? Pete Rose with the sports betting scandal. Baseball is only nationally relevant when there's some major scandal that is happening. Shohei Ohtani, the most he's ever been talked about nationally is not when he's won multiple MVPs, not when he won his World Series last year. It's when his interpreter, when there was a potential betting scandal that involved the face of Major League Baseball and Shohei Ohtani. The problem is it's not ESPN, it's not the networks, it's what we find interesting. I love Major League Baseball, you guys love it, but as far as across the board, not everyone is tuning in for those topics. So I'll defend ESPN. I'll defend the sports networks to that degree. I just don't think that by talking about it, that's going to grow interest in it. We dictate what they talk about, not the other way around.
I think the MLB is just incredibly regional. I think that's a big part of why, none of these national broadcast stuff really have caught on and worked. Sunday Night Baseball obviously worked for a long time, but it's coming to an end now because I think with streaming and how more accessible MLB TV and all the different ways to watch your team are, with 162 games that the Reds are going to play, I don't watch a ton of other baseball. I mean, I watch the big games, but my focus is on the Reds. And if I don't have to, the Reds don't play a single Saturday Night Baseball game, so I'd probably watch 3 or 4 Sunday Night Baseball games this year. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that watch all of them and everything along those lines, but I think for the normal baseball fan, and anyone below that into the casual realm of baseball watching. I think it's more regionalized than any other professional sport, and I think that's why this national stuff just doesn't work, because you're going to watch it on FanDuel Sports Network or Bally or whatever it's called this week, and that's what the route you're going to go instead of flipping to ESPN and just seeing who plays. The Reds always play, so I just watch them.
Yeah, I've never once as a Reds fan tuned into ESPN's coverage of baseball because I know they're not going to talk about the Reds. They know like Kinner just said, if they ever talked about the Cincinnati Reds, God forbid who would watch that. So they're not going to talk about it. They would only talk about the Yankees and the Dodgers, and that just doesn't interest a lot of baseball fans. A lot. It's regional. It's a local thing. It's not a national sport. It's not. It hasn't been that way in a long time. ESPN Sunday Night Baseball, to be quite honest, I've never tuned in. I've never cared. If it was Yankees Red Sox back in like 2010, I was watching.
They play like 20 games on it a year, so I usually watch.
Correct. One. Yeah. That's the only one I'm going to watch, and it really even that, like, I don't watch it anymore. I just watch the Cincinnati Reds. So I'm okay with Rob Manfred's reasoning. I don't think that it's a bad thing at all that baseball is getting away from ESPN. They don't talk about it. They don't plug the sport. It's just there. It's something that's there. It happens on Sunday night during the summer when everybody's out having fun. So I really don't think it's shocking. I don't think it's a big deal. They're going to probably go to Fox if they were smart, Fox Sports or Fox, and they'll do it there if they know their audience, which I'm sure they do. So I just think that it's like we talk about the sports. Which sport's number one? What sport's number one? Again, if you have an audience and you have an audience, you don't need to just cater to other people. I don't think you need to do that. So there's no point of having an ESPN and quote unquote growing the sport because nobody's watching it. Nobody has watched it over the last 15 to 20 years. So that's what that is. And honestly, it's not that big. I really don't think it's that big of a deal.
I don't either.
Not for baseball.
It's a little. I think it's a little big of a deal just because they're cutting out 2 years early. Like they're just getting out early. But I'm more curious to your guys' point though. Is it the end of the world? No, I am curious. They must have a plan of where they want to go. And I'm curious if baseball, who's been so progressive over the years with all the changes they've made to the sport, Rob Manfred, despite everyone yelling at him and telling him to leave the game alone, the game's only gotten more and more popular in recent years due to a lot of the changes that he's implemented. I wonder if they're going to go super progressive here and we see a Netflix type of deal done, or we see an Amazon or something like along those lines. Like I wonder where they are going to take this as far as the national coverage is concerned. Some of my favorite ESPN personalities when it comes to covering the Reds are on ESPN. There are some of my favorite baseball personalities are on ESPN, like the Buster Olneys, Tim Kirkshins, and guys like that. I wonder what that means for them moving forward, of course. But overall, I'm curious to see where baseball goes from here as far as who's going to be the home base for them, if you will, when it comes to their national dollars.
Speaking of Amazon Prime, it was released a couple days ago. We tweeted about it on the Chatterbox socials that you can watch the Reds on Amazon Prime for $19.99 a month. You can add that channel, FanDuel Sports Network, to your Amazon Prime and watch the Reds on there. So if they're already working out ways to get TV deals for Major League Ball clubs on Amazon Prime or have a way with FanDuel Sports Network to get those games on Amazon Prime, that certainly looks like a conversation's already underway. Right? If they're going to move into the live sports space and they're already starting with this kind of thing, maybe Bezos wants to get baseball on there, all the primetime baseball on there. I think that'd be interesting. That's my favorite route that we've seen people go streaming wise for live sports. I think it's just more prevalent than really everything else. Peacock was tough when the NFL put it on there. Paramount Plus always has a struggle. I think Netflix and Amazon Prime are the two best ones, just because I think most households have them.
Yeah, some more information on that too. Chatterbox also put this out yesterday as well. More information on the FanDuel Sports Network. They officially announced their direct-to-consumer prices for the Reds with 4 options. It's about what I remember when we were talking about this, guys, like in the summer last year of what this could look like. I think we did a topic one time about like what's the most you would spend per month, like a subscription price. What's the most you would spend a month to watch the Reds? I can't remember what some of your answers were. But I do remember we said probably about like $20 a month. So it's $19.99 a month for the FanDuel, direct consumer price again for the Reds. $19.99 a month is one of the options. Your guys' thoughts on that? Is that high? Is that doable? Where are you at with that when it comes to watching your Reds?
It's a lot of money. I mean, it's a lot of money. I mean, I'm not going to say it's not $20 a month isn't a lot of money for the Reds, who have made the playoffs 4 times in 25 years. But if you haven't had the ability to watch him over the past 10 years, of course you're going to pay it because you want to see the team. Like if ending blackouts is the easiest thing to do ever, and thank God they finally found a way to at least start doing it. So, my friends I think we're trying to pool a bunch of money together, and we'll see if we can do that if they allow password sharing. If not, then we'll all go out and get it individually and do it that way. I have cable, so I'm good. But the other friends I have, they're going to go out and get Amazon Prime and pay $20 a month and we'll be able to watch the team, because they haven't been able to do that before. Yep. They've been forced to listen to it on 700 WLW, which isn't a bad thing. I'm just saying it's you can't watch the games.
And there are full season options, different packages that you can buy to have the Reds. $105.99 for the full season, starting March 20th to the end of the season. $122.99 for the full season from February 21st through the end of the season. So that gives you all your spring training games and everything like that. And then $189.99 for just the entire season as a whole. So all those stuff certainly makes it a little bit easier to swallow than the $19.99 a month. But if you think the Reds are going to be out of it early, do the monthly and just cut that sucker off in like May.
Yep.
What do you guys think the difference is? So is the 4 pricing options. So $122.99 for the full season from February 21st to the end of the season. Is that through the end of the regular season? Because that's a big price hike from $122.99 for full season from February 21st through the end of the season. Then there's $189.99 for the full year. Well, what the hell are you getting outside of the season to justify spending the $60 more?
Local broadcasts don't do the playoffs, so it would be. I don't think
so.
That
you don't get playoffs with the $122.99.
You shouldn't. I don't think
they need it.
That's fair. I just was curious. That's all.
Yeah, I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't think. Yeah, you wouldn't need it. They'd be nationally televised.
Yeah. Oh, well, I see what you're saying there, but for the Reds, yeah, you would need the playoff.
I mean, maybe
well, that's true too.
Maybe
the Reds, God knows, they're not making the playoffs.
In terms of maybe you do get that in terms of like mobile watching and streaming and stuff along those lines. You get the postseason games. That could be what it is.
Or, I could just read the description that's in here. That would help. So how about I do that? I asked the question. Now let's provide the answer. So the annual pass, that's $189.99. It's another purchase option that is the annual pass. The 12-month subscription is available for that price we mentioned, $189.99. It'll provide access to all content available on FanDuel Sports Network Ohio, including, so this makes a little bit more sense. So for $189.99 for the full calendar year, you now get full access to all Cleveland Cavaliers, Columbus Blue Jackets, and Cincinnati Reds. So that makes it worth it. At first, I was just trying to figure out what the heck the difference is between the full season versus the full year. What are you getting outside of the season to justify the $60 price hike? But that makes sense. You get all 3 of those teams then. That's not bad. Are any of those numbers too high? Is that, I know you said 20 was a little high for the, per month, but are those numbers high in your opinion still?
That's a tough combo for a guy like me. Justifying the 180 or whatever it is for the Blue Jackets.
Yeah.
I'm not going to watch, or what's the other, or the Cavs? Like, I'm not going to watch either of those.
I mean, if you don't have access to those games and you want to watch the games, it's of course worth it. It's just whether or not you've had access. I've had access to all of it, so I'm all good. I'm not paying whatever number that was you just read. So I'm sure there's somebody out there that hasn't had the ability to watch his teams, and you know what? He's going out there and he's like, I'll pay that. Yeah, sure. I get to watch something.
It's great because it gives people an avenue to watch their baseball team. And that's what we've been arguing for years and years and years. It feels like we want to watch the Reds play baseball.
Yeah.
And they're making it easier to do so. So if the biggest complaint is a couple dollars here and there, I think we'll take that, over widespread blackouts.
And one more follow-up on this, too. Again, Chatterbox, they just put everything out there on their socials over on X, so go check that out. But further details, it says this is to watch the game streaming either through the app or a computer. Reds games will still be offered on most, if not all, of the same cable providers as last season. This is also only for in-market fans. Those who live outside the Reds markets will need to watch on MLB TV as far as that's concerned. So there you go. But all right. By the way, how are you guys watching the game? Like, what do you guys have? I have YouTube TV, so I'm gonna have to mix it up. I'm gonna have to figure out a way to to get access to the Reds.
I've had
through
cable.
this.
I've had cable.
Yeah,
so
I'm a
I've been able to
Spectrum
watch.
man, so I'm good to go.
Okay,
Spectrum
so you
is
guys are
Ben.
good to go.
Oh yeah.
There you go. Simple. All right. Off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. Let's continue talking Cincinnati Reds. Yesterday, we gave out some of our underrated Reds names to keep an eye on this upcoming season. None of us put Nick Martinez in that conversation. Should we have an interesting write-up by Charlie Goldsmith regarding Nick Martinez being an underrated name to keep an eye out for? We'll discuss when we come back. More off the bench when we return. All right, and we are back off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. Yesterday, we threw out a list of, some names, underrated names to keep an eye out for the Reds this upcoming season, names that are going to play a pivotal role in them accomplishing their goals of winning the division, making the playoffs, and obviously, having a successful 2025 campaign. We talked so much about Elliot De La Cruz. We talked so much about Matt McClain and Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, and the bigger names, but they can all do what they're supposed to, but if the rest of the guys around them don't fulfill their end of the bargain, this team's going nowhere fast. So we threw out a lot of names yesterday, TJ Friedel and some others. Obviously, Espinal's name was thrown out there. One name was not on the list, and we were having an interesting conversation during the break about this, that's not on the list that Charlie Goldsmith was speaking very highly of and kind of putting in that underrated category, was that of a Nick Martinez. Now, Charlie Goldsmith, reading the article that he had about, Nick Martinez, he goes on to say last year Martinez ranked 16th in all of baseball in pitching WAR, slotting in ahead of Logan Webb and Aaron Nola. Martinez was elite at limited hard contact, limiting walks, and a generating swing and miss. Even though Martinez did spend half of the season in the bullpen, he's still ranked 80th in Major League Baseball in innings pitched. Only 11 pitchers in baseball last year threw more innings than he did, and also had a better ERA. So he goes on to talk about the fact that obviously when we talk about some of the biggest names in baseball, best pitchers in baseball, Martinez's numbers are right up there with them. He will never be looked at as a guy to be in the Cy Young conversation, but his numbers were as good as a lot of guys who were in the Cy Young conversation a year ago. So I know you guys said you don't really put him in that overrated or in that underrated category, but when you do look at it from that perspective, when I came across this article, it kind of changed my thinking on him just a little bit. Are we underappreciating just how good his numbers were last year? And what is it about him that just doesn't truly grab you to get you to buy in? Because his numbers are very, very good. Only select few pitchers had better numbers than he did last year, but he didn't get any attention or love when it came to the Cy Young conversation.
I don't think we're underappreciating what he did last year. We gave him a $21 million contract. I think we gave him maybe more than he deserved.
That's the best way to value someone.
Right. Yeah. We gave him a qualifying offer and he took it. So I think we certainly appreciate what he had. I don't necessarily not buy into Nick Martinez. I don't think he's a top what do you say, 11 or 12 pitcher in baseball. Yeah. And if you do think that, then certainly he's underrated, one of the most underrated players in baseball, and then he should be talked about as such. But I don't quite put him in that tier. I do think he's very good. I think he's crucial to the Reds' success this year. We don't even know what role he's necessarily going to play, and I still think he's towards the top of the list of people who are crucial towards the Reds' success, but I think most people know that and talk about that. That's the reason I left him off the list yesterday, is I just don't think he's underrated. I think what he means to the Reds, I think most people know, and at least in the circles that I've seen, have been talking about quite frequently, is that Nick Martinez, being what he was last year, can propel this team pretty far this season.
He was phenomenal. He was what the Reds needed last year. He was available. He was healthy. He was consistent. He had a 3.1 ERA. The guy was. He was lights out. In the versatility of what he does, being able to go into the bullpen, go 3-4 innings out of the bullpen. You can be a starter, go 5-6 innings as a starter. There's not a lot of guys that are doing that in Major League Baseball. I think the Reds paid him $21 million because he's a unicorn in the fact that he's one of the only pitchers doing that today. He's the only one doing that. So, you can rely upon him as whatever you need him to be. That's almost a superpower in my eyes. So I'm happy that the Reds got him. Would I have traded an outfield power bat over Nick Martinez for the same price? Maybe. I don't know. I would have to see the player, but I know that's the big knock, as it were, on Nick Martinez, is that you didn't go out and get a big free agent bat. You got Nick Martinez. But Nick Martinez, though the name doesn't hold as much power as some of the big Cy Young players that Kinner was talking about, Nick Martinez does bring a small market team a semblance of consistency and solid production that I don't think that the Reds have had in quite some time.
Keep in mind, too, I think the other reason why, I think we were all impressed with what he was doing, but keep in mind the reason he was also in the rotation is because of how depleted the rest of the rotation was. They were decimated by injuries. I think the reason we didn't appreciate it as much is because the season was already flushed down the toilet. There were no great pitchers around him to really help it stand out even more. He stood out because no one else could pitch during that stretch, and he filled that void perfectly. But the thing is, one thing I haven't thought about, imagine Hunter Green's going to pick up where he left off last year. If Nick Lodolo stays healthy and he takes that next step forward, I think if Martinez is picking up where he left off last year, all of a sudden, I think we're talking about a completely different animal when it comes to this rotation, because we talked about the importance of Brady Singer being, added to this rotation. Abbott or Rhett Lauder, obviously being healthy is going to be key. But with the numbers he was putting up as a starter last year, I don't think they got appreciated enough because the situation of the season, the rotation being as banged up as it was. But if he's doing that following great starts from a Nick Lodolo and a Hunter Green, I think he's going to be viewed at in a completely different light. Now, he's 34 years old. All right, he signed a 2-year deal with the Reds coming into last year. He had the option to leave. Obviously, he accepted the qualifying offer, and he bet on himself. Reading this article, it talked about he's been very big on short-term contracts, so he has more control of where he goes and how long he's there and the money that he makes and everything along those lines. But I do think that is something to keep an eye on. If he picks up where he left off and his numbers are contributing towards a winner, I think that's when he'll also be looked at in a completely different light as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. I think that's the case with a lot of guys on the Reds. If this team starts winning a little bit, we'll see a lot more respect for them league-wide. And I think that's something that we saw play out pretty clearly for us in the NFL season this year in this city. We saw guys who, finished below where we thought they should finish on league-wide awards because the team didn't win enough games. And honestly, it felt the same way last year with where Hunter Green finished in the Cy Young and where Elliot finished in the MVP for the Reds with not winning enough games to really be viewed where your numbers say you should be viewed in that conversation. So hopefully this team can pick up, a lot more wins this year, be in the mix for the playoffs, be competitive, and try to win the division, because then it's not just Nick Martinez, but everyone on this team, all the young guys on this team will get the respect they deserve, and the Reds as a whole will get the respect they deserve. And I think there can be a spotlight shined on this city because of how great some of the players we have are. And if we just start winning a couple games, start hot, I think this team can be really, really exciting. And Nick Martinez is absolutely part of that.
100% he is.
As far as Hunter Green is concerned, another update from Charlie from yesterday. A note he made here is that the starting pitchers for the Cactus League opener usually historically have been guys who are trying to make the team. Hunter Green is by no means trying to make the team. But he will be starting for the Reds coming up this weekend in their Cactus League debut. And the reason that's interesting, Hunter Green goes on to say, I feel great. I feel like I've been able to add more strength to my body. I slimmed down, which will help throughout the season. It also is a good indication, too, of just how aggressive this team's ready to be right away. I mean, the fact that Hunter Green is on the bat, last year we were debating, Hunter Green, should he be the opening day starter? Obviously, this isn't as big of a deal as opening day starter, but it is interesting. Right out the gate, we're not easing into it. Hunter Green, you're our guy. Get out there, set the tone. Let's go. I think that's pretty cool that they're setting the tone with Hunter Green right off the bat, debuting in the Cactus League on Saturday.
First positive for Terry Francona over David Bell, making the easy decisions.
Yep.
Make your ace, superstar, Cy Young candidate pitcher your opening starter. I know we're not to opening day yet, but I'd be shocked if someone else is starting on opening day. So I think Terry Francona, great job. David Bell screwed it up last year. Glad you got it right.
Hunter Green was a 6-WAR player last year. He was phenomenal. Anybody who had any doubts about what this guy was, in the 2 years prior, I think we were all proven wrong. For those of you who said, maybe we'll ship him out to the bullpen and we'll have him be the closer, which I have no doubt he could be a great closer, but he's a starting pitcher. He threw 150 innings. He was 9-5, not that win-loss matters at all. And his strikeout rate's unheard of. So Hunter Green is the bona fide borderline best pitcher on the squad, and I don't think it's remotely close. I would say borderline best player on the team, just because I think Ellie and him are pretty similar.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, Hunter Green, his health is important. He was in 26 games last year, but the 26 games, he had 24 games in 2022, 22 and 23. I think the difference with those, he wasn't going as far as we thought he could. There were some injury stuff that was all right, maybe he's not completely healthy. It never felt like last year he was dealing with a ton of injuries up until the end of the season. So to see Hunter Green back and ready and to be our bona fide ace this year, I'm very, very excited for it. And I think, again, he's going to have a Cy Young caliber year. I do. I think he's one of the best pitchers in the National League. I think he's one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball. Not a lot of guys have a pitcher like this for the contract that we have Hunter Green for.
And a lot of the guys that are cemented above him in those rankings are older and established, and you know what you're going to get. And I'm not necessarily saying Hunter is going to be the best pitcher in the world, but there is still so much space for him to grow. With how good he already is, I don't know where he could end up. He's one of those guys that certainly falls in the Ellie De La Cruz category of we have superstars in Cincinnati, and who knows how good this team could get if you just fix everything else.
I think last week or the week before, Brad Meader, the general manager for the Reds, said, when it comes to superstars in Cincinnati, they're never going to go out and buy a superstar. They're never going to go out and acquire a superstar in free agency or through a trade. Their superstars are all going to come from within, and that they're hoping that that's the case a lot of times moving forward. We keep calling Ellie a generational type talent. I don't know if Hunter Green's a generational type talent, but he is a unicorn type talent when it comes to the Reds, because it's very rare that the Reds do bring up a talent like this. Usually you get your Joey Votto and then a bunch of really good players coming up through the system around him. You got Ellie and Hunter Green that were coming up together. Nick Lodolo could be a huge star. They've hit on a lot of these guys. They have to continue down that progression, of course. But man, oh man, to have Hunter and Ellie together come up at the same time the way they have, I don't think they get enough credit for that, which stems back to what we talked about earlier in the week, the job that the front office has done technically from that perspective. It is pretty wild, the talent that has come up pretty much all at the same time over the last 2 years.
It's the only chance you have to try to compete if you're a team like the Reds. And it's really hard to do, because when you get a lot of great players, a lot of times they're not on the same timeline. And the fact that we have it and they're all up and they all seem to be, or most of them seem to be legitimate, future stars in the game of baseball, that's incredibly exciting. And that puts the Reds in a spot that we haven't been in a long time. There was one more nugget before the first day of Reds Spring Training that I thought was really interesting from Charlie Goldsmith as well. Just a great quote that continues to, let everyone in Cincinnati know how much we should love Terry Francona and how much he loves us. Charlie Goldsmith said that the Reds start their spring training with a split squad game, one versus Cleveland and one versus Milwaukee. Terry Francona, Brad Mills, and Chris Valleca will be at the Brewers game. Freddie Benavides will manage the home game with the number 1 squad. And Francona said that that's because he doesn't want the spring training opener to be a hug fest where the focus is on him seeing former players and friends in Cleveland. This is the quote: "I want these guys to know how important they are, how much they mean to me. I'm a Red." We need these guys to know we're invested in what we're doing here. Terry Francona is completely bought in, loves this team, and he's ready to go for this season. I thought that was cool that he's solely focused on Cincinnati and wants to make sure that this Reds team is at the top of his mind as we get closer to the season.
I think it's what separates him from other managers that you get out there. And, no disrespect to the Skip Schumachers of the world, but I don't think they make an impact like Terry Francona does. I don't think it's remotely close. I think there's about 20 managers in Major League Baseball that are in the Skip Schumacher camp, which I think are, I'm not going to call them worthless. I'm not going to say that because they have worth. They're good managers out there. I'm just saying there's clearly a top echelon level caliber of managers. We have one of those, right? And I'm very, very happy about that. And hopefully he changes the culture of the Cincinnati Reds back to a little bit of what Dusty Baker brought here in Cincinnati. I think that winning culture, that old school style baseball, that's what I want in Cincinnati, and that's what we've been missing since 2013, right? And we've not had a lot of success since that. 4 playoff appearances, only one of them by David Bell, right? And asterisk, so it was a COVID year, so I don't even really count it.
Didn't score a run. So.
Didn't score a run. It's like this is the guy we want leading our franchise. This is the guy we want to be the face of our franchise. So I'm hoping Terry Francona is going to be good this year because boy, it's going to be frustrating if the Reds start losing games.
We do have a super chat in here.
Super chat.
Michael Rolfe, of course, as always, a meat bomb here by Michael Rolfe. Just got back from the doctor with my son. Double ear infection. Oh no. I want the Reds to be as successful this season as my kids have been at getting sick this winter. Call-in line? Sorry, no call-in line today. I don't have those capabilities. Casey refuses to teach me certain things so that he remains important at Chatterbox Sports. So I've been put away from the call-in line so that he can keep some worth here.
Casey really went hard for his birthday, by the way.
Yeah, he did.
You want to talk
3 days
about
off.
He last worked on his birthday. He went so hard at that night celebrating. You only turned 27 once, so he made it count.
That's right.
Either one.
What'd you do for your 27th birthday, Ken Dog?
It was almost 8 years ago. I don't know what I did. I don't even think I did anything.
I'm not 27.
Well, I guess.
I imagine I'll sit at home and cry.
Casino?
Or casino. One of the two.
Ooh, you and Burton just hanging out night on the town?
Well, Elliot is not a Hard Rock guy.
I'm not a Hard Rock guy, and that's probably what happened.
No.
That's probably what happened to Jermaine Burton. Honestly, he lost a little bit of those slots because Hard Rock. I think their casino. It's impossible to win there. He's got if he comes over to Hollywood, I can make Jermaine Burton a bona fide wide receiver 1.
Big Hollywood guy, huh?
Big Hollywood guy.
Nice. So am I. That's right. We do a lot of our shows over there. Not at the same one you go to, but the one here in Dayton. But I tell you what, the reason Burton needs to hang out with Elliot a lot more is because he needs to be around a champion. And we're going to tell you why our guy Elliot is a champion when we come back. He is a big-time champion. He hoisted a trophy last night, and we want to make sure he gets the love and praise that he deserves. So we'll step away for a few moments. Elliot's a champion. Champion of what, you ask? We'll tell you when we come back. Plus, NL Central, we're going to give you our top 5 pitchers in the NL Central. We'll do all of that when we come back. More Off the Bench when we return. All right, we welcome you back. Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. Elliot's a champion A champion at what? Jacob, what did he accomplish last night? What, he added a trophy to his mantle last night.
He's a legend of the game. He's a Pop-A-Shot champion at our very own Champions Grill, the wonderful establishment where we host the Chatterbox Bengals every other Thursday night during the football season.
That's right.
Elliot, first place Pop-A-Shot champion.
Wow. Listen, it felt great last night. Thank you. It felt great to win one. You know what? It felt great to win anything. Yeah. That was probably the first place finish of all time. So congrats to me. I guess they're doing this thing where, there's like 16 or 18 bars. Top 3 Pop-A-Shot players at each bar go to the finals. Winner of the finals gets flown out to Vegas to compete for the $10,000 crown. See, I said, it was late last night, and I'm like, I just worked out, and I was like, you know what? Let's go. Let's try it. My buddy actually won it. Shout out to Frankie. He went out and won the whole thing last year.
Vegas? In
Vegas. Flew him out. They flew him out to Vegas. I think you and a friend get to go to Vegas.
That's awesome.
You get flown out there, and he won the $10,000. I think he has the check framed in his basement. The big, those big ceremonial checks. He has it framed in his basement. So
okay, maybe I'm dumb.
Okay.
Wouldn't you have to cash that?
No, but I think I think that's only for show. Have you watched The Office? Because I learned about this.
There's also not rabies doctors.
Well, That's true. That's true. We learned about this in The Office. The check is just you have to pay like $300 for the check, and it's just for ceremony. They just give you the money. But yeah,
Big check would be one of the coolest man cave decorations of all time.
It would be.
A $10,000 Vegas Pop-A-Shot check.
Oh yeah, it doesn't get better than that. If I go out and win this thing, I don't know what I'd do, but there would be.
Well, you'd
some
have to bring
sort
it
of
in
party.
one day.
I would.
Yeah.
I would have to bring it in one day. We could put it up right here by the Tom Brenneman jersey collection. So we'll have the big check in here. But yeah, I've got a 1 in 54 shot. It looks like at winning the title.
How do you feel?
I felt great last night. I felt great. I think there was like 30 competitors, and I beat them all, smoked them.
No, you finished first at the bar?
Yeah. Oh yeah, finished first.
Was anyone close?
My score was 78. The second closest was like 58.
Oh wow!
And a little bit of backstory.
So you're the betting favorite going into Oakley Greens as of now.
So my buddy that won last year, I think the winning score in the finals, he told me, was 150. So we're gonna have to train. We're going to have to train a lot.
Do you have a Pop-A-Shot, or is this a Dave & Buster's situation?
I think we're going to have to go to Dave & Buster's, and I'm going to have to train. Because
I'll go with you after work some days.
Yeah, we'll get the gang and we'll go, because that's the only way I can compete at this. I have to get better. I just have to improve. And it's funny because at first, I don't want to make fun of the Pop-A-Shot people, but they had us lined up 5 feet behind the Pop-A-Shot thing, which defeats the whole. I was taking jump shots.
Yeah.
I was taking jump shots.
You should be at the base of it.
And you're just flipping them up. So I had to take a shot, walk to it, pick it back up, step back behind my line, and go.
Well, that's why you didn't get close to 150.
Correct.
No one got 150 doing that.
So that's what I'm saying. And I went up, and my first score was 25, and they had like 3 other people go, and they got like 7 and 4 and 2. We're like, this isn't Pop-A-Shot. We're just taking jump shots on a mini hoop with mini balls. So I went up and I complained, and I'm like, hey, all right, so let's do it the Pop-A-Shot way. And I think they agreed, and they were very nice about it. So I was the champion of the real Pop-A-Shot and the fake Pop-A-Shot, the jump shot Pop-A-Shot.
There we go. Our very own champion.
That's right.
So again, the next step is what? One more time. When is the next event?
It is March 22nd. So we got a little bit. We got a lot. We got a whole month to train.
You were one of the first stops on the.
I was the first. I was. You know what? How about this? I was the first player to punch his ticket to the big dance.
Wow.
I was the first player to punch his ticket to the big dance.
I'll work on that.
We need to get one of we need to get one of those boards so you could slap the logo right on there. You know how when they advance to the next round of the tournament, that we're working on it. We're gonna get it taken care of.
I feel like Longwood or Radford, whoever competes in those first conference tournaments in college basketball. Good luck to Tennessee. They don't want to see me in the first round.
16 versus 1 upset coming your way.
Yeah.
There you go. But yeah, so that's why you speak from experience. You're so critical of free throws and all those things because you know what you're doing. You're an animal.
Yeah.
You know exactly how the flick of the wrist, you have it all under control. I like it. All right. back to baseball real quick. We talked about Hunter Green. We're talking about Nick Martinez. We talked a lot about the pitchers for the Reds this week. What about the NL Central as a whole? Because we've talked a lot about the Reds' chances of winning the division. The Cubs have made quite a few big moves, obviously, this offseason. The Brewers have been quiet. The Pirates are the Pirates. And then the Cardinals, they've made a lot of headlines this offseason for doing nothing this offseason. All of a sudden, they're not the Cardinals that we've all grown up with. They've kind of changed their tune a little bit as far as how aggressive they want to be in that front office, and they haven't drafted well and developed well. The Cardinals are in some trouble, obviously. But when you look at the NL Central as a whole, when you look at the pitching as a whole, we talk about that being one of the strengths of the Reds. But how does it stack up against the rest of the NL Central? If you had to pick your top 5 pitchers out of the NL Central, who would those 5 individuals be? How many Reds would be on that list? Jake, we'll start with you. Who are your top 5 pitchers out of the NL Central?
Sadly, only one Red on the list for me, and it's Hunter Green. He's coming in at 2.
That's right.
I have Paul Skeens at 1. I think that seems pretty obvious after what we saw last year. He might be the number 1 pitcher in baseball, so I thought it was fair to have him as the number 1 pitcher in the National League Central. Hunter Green at 2. Shota Imanaga at 3. What he did last year, especially at the start of the year for Chicago in his first year in MLB, was absolutely incredible. I have him at 3. Jared Jones, second half of the Pirates duo, at 4. And then Justin Steele at 5. So 2 Cubs, 2 Pirates, 1 Red in my top 5 as starting pitchers.
I don't hate that. I don't hate that at all. You said Justin Steele was your 5th?
Yes.
I'll take that. Justin Steele's pretty damn good. Do I go next, Kenner? Can I go next?
Yep.
So I'm going to go with, as my number 1 overall pick in the first round of the NL Central best pitchers ranking, I'm going to take Hunter Green. Hunter Green is the best pitcher in the NL Central. I'll stand by it. He had a 2.7 ERA last year. He was incredible, and I think he's only going to get better from there. I think Paul Skeens is very good, but it's still a little bit early for Paulie. We'll see if Paulie next year is going to go for another Cy Young. I bet he will be. But I'm going to still back my guy Hunter Green over Paulie. I'll go Paulie 2, Paul Skeens with the 2nd overall pick. At 3rd, I wasn't going to do it, Jacob, but I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to put Justin Steele in there. Justin Steele is probably a top 5 pitcher in the NL Central. I don't think there's a question about it. So I'll give him the number 3 spot. Number 4, I'm going to give Brandon Woodruff. Brandon Woodruff is a guy people are going to forget about this season. I'm going to read the stats for his last 4 seasons. In 2023, obviously he did not play last year. In 2023, he had a 2.28 ERA, in a limited time. In 153 innings in 2022, he had a 3.05 ERA, and then a 2.56 ERA in 21 in 180 innings pitched. Finished 5th in Cy Youngs. He's a 2-time All-Star. I think Brandon Woodruff's unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that forget about that name heading into this season. So the Brewers, you can always underrate them, but they're always going to have some sort of pitching. And Brandon Woodruff's going to be one of the and in fact, I'm going to say he's going to be the best pitcher on that team by a wide margin. And my number 5, I'm going to go with a hometown boy, Sonny Gray.
Okay.
Sonny Gray, the hometown hero, Sonny Gray. The Cardinals aren't a good team. I would venture to say they're a dumpster fire, but I'll refrain. He's thrown a lot of innings over the past, 7 years or so. And I think that he gives them what Nick Martinez gives us. He gives them that consistency, that baseline. Wasn't a great year for him last year. Still had a 3.8 ERA in 166 innings. In 2023, had a 5 WAR, a 2.7 ERA, 184 innings pitched. The year before that, a 3.08. He's been phenomenal. I think if the Cardinals have any chance to be somewhat competitive, it's going to have to be every 5th day with Sonny Gray.
You guys remember Sonny Gray's name was being, the Reds there were some reports that came out at the very beginning of the offseason that the Reds were, interested in reuniting with Sonny Gray, of course. I wonder, obviously Jonathan India ended up being a part of the deal that ultimately landed Freddie Singer. Do you guys think there was a possibility of Jonathan India being traded to the Cardinals to land him at some point?
I think there's always a possibility of the Reds reuniting with old players. It just seems like something that they always tend to do. So, yeah, I wouldn't rule it out. Obviously, the fact that Jonathan India was subsequently traded for a pitcher, and we were linked to Sonny Gray earlier, I think that definitely could have been in the cards, probably asking too much for an aging pitcher, and they felt better, getting a guy who's kind of on that same trajectory age-wise as a lot of the guys we already have in the lineup. So they went with Brady Singer instead. But, yeah, I never thought the Sonny Gray trade made a lot of sense for the Reds.
No.
Who has the best rotation in the NL Central?
Probably.
I think it's the Cubs.
Probably the Cubs, and then I'd take the Reds over the Pirates. I know they've got.
I would too.
I know they've got Jared Jones and Paul Skeens. I'd still take the Reds when healthy over the Pirates. I think the Reds are as good as the Cubs. But I'm not going to say the Reds are a bona fide better rotation than the Cubs today. I think that could happen. I think there's a chance.
Yeah.
In the Central, you have a lot of deep rotations. They're all solid. I think a lot of these teams have very good 1 through 5s. They at least have very good top 3 guys in that rotation. But I think the Reds rotation is very, very solid. I think there's depth there. They have some pieces the fact that we've talked about when healthy, the fact that Rhett Lauder could possibly start in Louisville right off the bat, just shows you right there. Like there's a lot of good quality names. The Reds have not had a rotation like this in quite some time where you feel pretty good about 1 through 5. There's been years where you felt good about Luis Castillo and Sonny Gray. Obviously you get Trevor Bauer, but there were still some like pieces on the back end that you were just kind of hoping would carry their weight. This isn't the most star-studded rotation, but I think it's the most balanced rotation the Reds have had in quite some time. I love the Reds rotation. I think it's one of the more impressive things about this team. It's not the sexiest as far as big names, but it's headlined by Hunter Green. Obviously, Nick Lodolo has a high ceiling. Brady Singer comes in to provide that stability. Nick Martinez, we talked about his numbers earlier, whether they're underrated or overrated or however you want to view them. And then obviously whether it's going to be a Rhett Lauder. Graham Ashcraft has a chance to pitch his way back into the rotation too. I love the Reds rotation, but the NL Central as a whole, a lot of deep rotations, not star-studded, but deep. The Central pretty even in that conversation.
I think that the Reds, what makes them the best too, is, and David Shaw brought it up in the chat as well, how deep they are. Like their starting rotation, right? It can consist of 8 guys this year. It can consist of more than just 5 guys. Graham Ashcraft, I'll continue to say that name until he's no longer with the Reds, is still a guy that can compete at a high major league level when he's as a starting pitcher. I still believe that. His big issue is always, and it will always be probably, dealing with the third time around the lineup, right? You can get that first and second time around the lineup. Once we get to the top of the third order, right, that's when he starts to struggle and he starts to go in the tank. I think the Reds have incredible depth at that position, and I think it makes them, in my opinion, at least the top of the NL Central pitching rankings.
Yeah, I think health is the biggest
thing
holding me back.
Yeah.
We haven't seen Andrew Abbott or Nick Lodolo string together full seasons of the peak of what they are, and if they can do that, I agree. I think the Reds are certainly number one. The reason I lean to the Cubs, we've seen more consistency out of those guys. And I do comfortably have the Reds at 2. I think the Reds are certainly more exciting and have a higher ceiling. I can't quite put them at 1 right now.
Yeah.
I know we didn't really plan this, but as far as bullpens are concerned, who was the most impressive bullpen in this division?
It was the Brewers. I don't know if it's going to be the Brewers going forward.
No
Cubs,
Devin Williams, but they still have Pioms.
Yep. The Cubs bullpen sucks. At least it did suck last year. The Reds bullpen might be first. Maybe.
Cubs just got the closer from the Astros.
Yeah, they did. I'm
blanking on his name.
Ryan Presley.
Yes.
I think the Reds bullpen's probably going to be the best in the Central. I'll stand by that. I think the Reds bullpen's going to be the best in the Central.
I think that comes back pretty significantly to the conversation today and yesterday about expectations around a lot of players. I think if Alexis Diaz returns to the closer that he was a couple of years ago when he was an all-star, then certainly that helps the Reds there. If, Rhett Lauder is what we hope he is again to start this year and Nick Martinez moves to the bullpen, that makes the bullpen a lot better. If Graham Ashcraft is, as you said, struggles through getting through the order the third time, now he's in the bullpen, don't have to worry about that. The Bulldog can just go eat. I think the bullpen could be really exciting with a lot of these pieces, but again, it comes back to starting pitching injuries, because if you've got to remove a lot of those guys from the bullpen and give them starts, then the bullpen gets much worse. We saw it at the end of last year. It's not rocket science. The Reds have to stay healthy. It's the same for every single position group. It sounds like a broken record through spring training, but highlights are fun. The pictures are great. The quotes are awesome. It feels like baseball again. The only thing I want out of spring training is no major injuries. That's it. I don't care if they don't win a single game. I don't care what the numbers are. If we get out of spring training healthy, I'm going to be happy. So that's the main worry right now, and I'm going to hold my breath every time we play a game.
Yeah.
All right.
I think, by the way, I'm gonna amend my answer. I think it is the Cardinals. The Cardinals do have a good bullpen. I'll change my answer. Cardinals bullpen ranked, I think, 1, 2, 3, 5th in Major League Baseball last year.
Oh wow! Helsley's incredible.
Hell's Bells. So I think they might still. I don't think the Cardinals have lost that much.
But their starters aren't good.
No, the starters
so
are
the
the
bullpen's
starters are
probably going to
good.
get killed by that.
Yeah, I agree.
At least statistically.
All right, Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wingham and Dayton. Obviously, off season for college football, and we're talking about portal and recruiting and all this, but I saw a list come out for the top 5 coaches on the hot seat heading into next season. I'm curious, Elliot's thoughts. Do you think Scott Satterfield's name is on that list? We'll discuss when we come back. More Off the Bench when we return. Elliot, I wanted to give you a little bit of a break from beating up on old Wes Miller and focus on another Bearcat coach that you usually beat up on a lot, but usually not at this time of year. But college football. 24/7 Sports put out their top 5 list of the top 5 coaches on the hot seat heading in, not just to next season, but heading into this offseason, a crucial offseason, of course, when it comes to player development, obviously any more additional moves out of the portal, all that fun stuff that comes with it. But according to 24/7 Sports, take a look. Here is the list of the top 5 coaches on the hot seat. No surprise to see these names on this list. Brent Venables, that's the easiest one right there out of Oklahoma. I don't think it's a surprise at all that he is right there at the top of the list. I think Mike Norvell, who comes in at number 3, needs to be at number 2. I have no clue why. In fact, you can make an argument for him being at number 1 with how bad they fell off last season. But Brent Venables 1, Mike Gundy, Oklahoma State coming in at number 2. Obviously, just that run of continuous underachievement continues there. But Mike Norvell at 3, no surprise he's on the list. And I've been saying it for a while. I think Luke Fickell's done after this year. I think he gets fired. Now, Jacob, you sent this in the chat not too long ago. Luke Fickell, for a guy that has continuously underachieved, he has not recruited well. He has not got the right players out of the portal. They have not had a great win-loss record since he arrived in Madison. At the end of the day, he has done nothing right, but somehow gets a major raise. Gee, I wonder why he got that raise. Jake, what do you think happened there? What do you think happened there?
I don't know. Maybe a certain school's open defensive coordinator job called about him, and Wisconsin wanted to keep him around. We saw this happen last year with a lot of the names on that list. When Nick Saban retired from Alabama, all the schools that got calls from Greg Byrne, the Alabama AD, immediately gave their coaches massive raises. That's why Mike Norvell's buyout is nearing $90 million next year, because he was linked to the Alabama job. Now, he was never officially offered it, and now Florida State's in a terrible spot where they can't financially fire him unless they have an oil baron that wants to drop off a big check at halftime like A&M did with Jimbo Fisher. So I don't know what a lot of these teams are going to do now. I think Wisconsin's getting in a very similar boat, because any graphic about the most pressure on coaches had Luke Fickell in the top 3, 4, 5 on that list, and then you give him an extension through, I think it was 2031. It's incredible. So I don't understand what it is. He's under 500 in the Big Ten. He hasn't been ranked for any kind of period of time at Wisconsin. He hasn't been recruiting well. I don't understand what they see in him that they think they have to keep him. If he is getting offers from elsewhere, what's the draw to keep him around?
None. There's almost zero draw. I don't understand it at all.
Now, sometimes I'm curious. I didn't read into the details, and if you just mentioned it, my bad. Was there any buyout information? If you just said it, I didn't catch it. I apologize.
I did not see buyout information. I would be hard pressed to think he's taking a contract extension without some pretty significant buyouts. I mean, that's just the modern era of college football. These buyouts are half the contract. I mean, that's what most of the negotiations seem to come down to. It's less about what you make per year. It's more about, when I stink at this job, how much are you guys going to have to pay me to sit at home?
So the reason I bring that up is because a lot of times coaches will get contract extensions just to give off the perception of stability. When obviously if you're Luke Fickell and you're that coaching staff, you're out on the recruiting trail, and all these shows are talking about you being on the hot seat and how that your university is not committed to you. The only thing that this does is put out just good faith to those possible recruits who are out there. Like, well, I don't even know if Luke Fickell will be here next year. Yeah. Well, Wisconsin just gave him a raise. Schools do that all the time. A lot of times it's just stability and PR, not stunts, but it's done just to control that narrative, just to kind of ease the minds of recruits that are out there. But if there is a heavy buyout involved with this, and I didn't read the details of it, that seems weird to me. Like Norvell, we could say what we want about him. I didn't like how he handled the temper tantrum when his team didn't make the playoffs that year. But his team was dominant that year, and he put a ton of players in the NFL that year. I had no problem with him getting that extension. I don't think any of us anticipated the major fall off that occurred with Florida State. But this is not that same situation. I don't think he's accomplished anything to warrant the extension other than the PR side of just trying to ease the minds of recruits. But yeah, I think that raise didn't just come, or extension didn't just come because of, to ease the minds of recruits. I think it's what we had been talking about for a while. I bet you Ohio State, I think the reason it took so long to name a defensive coordinator is because they were going for an experienced head coach to come in to be the DC, the way they got a head coach to be their experienced OC the season before. So, yeah, I just don't think he'll be with Wisconsin a year from now at this time, unless they have like an Indiana type, unpredictable season. Right. When it's all said and done.
I was shocked to see number 5 on that list.
Yes.
Brian Kelly blew me away that he was that low. I can't imagine him being any lower than 2. I think he should be number 2 on that list. I think his seat is incredibly hot. I think he should be under more pressure than almost anyone in the entire country. We saw 3 guys go and compete for the Offensive Rookie of the Year, and they went 9-3 at LSU with Brian Kelly. That has to be somewhat of an indictment on who you are as a coach, not to mention the only reason you were kept around last year during an abysmal season is because you had the number 1 player in the country, Bryce Underwood, committed to come play quarterback for you at LSU, and then he flipped to Michigan after it was too late to fire you. So I think Brian Kelly absolutely is on the way out. I think he's had a terrible, terrible job with an embarrassment of riches at LSU. I think the seat's about as hot as anyone in the entire country, and I cannot wrap my head around why he's not 1 or 2 on most of these lists.
Look what his players did in the NFL last year.
Right.
And the fact that you have almost, I don't want to say no success, but very little success, I would say, as head coach at LSU. And I don't mean to diminish what he did at Notre Dame, but, Notre Dame never won a championship either. He's a championshipless coach. So I hope Brian Kelly at some point, fades into the infinite nothingness in the realm of college basketball or college football coaches.
Not to mention,
because I think he's overrated. I think he's overrated.
His star offensive coordinator left for Notre Dame.
Yeah,
he's Notre Dame's offensive coordinator now. Yeah. So he doesn't even have Mike Denbrock, who called the plays for Jaden Daniels. I think Brian Kelly is, floundering right now, drowning in Baton Rouge. I think he's certainly on the way out.
You guys are being very cruel to a guy that built a national championship roster that just competed for a national championship this year. You guys are being so cruel.
That's true. Kudos to him.
Kelly. I mean, his team, his guys were just in the national title game this year against Ohio State. I have no clue what you're talking about. No, I'm not there with him yet. I no doubt the pressure. I guess I'm not there yet as far as saying that he's on the hot seat. But I think that this season puts him on the hot seat if things aren't going well. His buyout has to be through the roof as well. But no, he deserves all criticism. I'll never defend him. I guess if I just had to put a top 5, if I had to put my own top 5 list, I don't know if I would have put him there yet. I agree with every name that's on that list. I think the only reason Satterfield's not on that list is just because Cincinnati is not viewed as big a program as those other ones. I don't think it's breaking news if he gets let go. And you bet your ass that Brian Kelly's there because Ryan Day won a national championship. Because if we were putting this list out last November, we know Ryan Day's name is on there. Let's go back to November. Jake, if this list came out in November, those 5 that are on there now, Ryan Day's on that list. Who are you taking off?
Ryan Day wouldn't even be on that list, in my opinion, because he wouldn't be a coach of college football because he'd be fired. So he'd be a distant number 1. There's no way around it. He absolutely would be number 1. He had the most pressure. If he would have lost to Notre Dame, I think he'd be number 1 on this list. Venables too, and just kind of bump everyone down. In which case, they'd have Brian Kelly off the list.
Yes,
insane. But yeah,
where are you at with? with Oklahoma State, with their head coach, with Gundy.
I'm
I don't know.
fairly
I just
certain
feel
Mike
like
Gundy can go 1-11 and be the Oklahoma State coach for a long time.
Yeah, I don't think he's
that's
going
why
anywhere.
I don't.
I just
him on
don't.
That
I
list
don't
is
see
weird.
him. Yeah.
They don't have expectations. Like that's why I'm
Should
just
he
like,
be?
what are we
Probably.
doing?
Like his
Yeah.
seat probably
Yeah.
should be hot.
Yeah.
But I just don't see it. I put him in the Dabo category. Obviously not a national championship winning coach, but did so much for a program that was relatively off the map when they took over and brought him back to a place of relevance where I think they're going to be able to coach until they don't want to coach anymore.
I mean, there's a name that's not on there that I think is getting a lot of praise because he got his team to the playoff last year. I would take Gundy off, and fine, let's leave Gundy on. I would actually take Kelly off. The name I would put on that list, I would substitute James Franklin for Brian Kelly.
James Franklin should be on the list.
And the reason is, and by the way, he's not getting this, like right now there's going to be a ton of expectations. They have a ton of returning players. The model that Penn State is following, or at least that they're falling into the pattern here, is the last 2 years, the last two teams to win national championships, they had a boatload of guys return. They had a lot of guys that could have gone to the NFL. They chose to forego the NFL to come back for one more year. The most experienced team has won the national championship the last 2 years. Is this the beginning to a new pattern in college football? If Penn State goes on to win a national championship, you bet you're behind that's going to be the new pattern to the teams that win titles. It's going to be the most veteran-led, experienced teams, guys who forego the NFL to come back for one more run. We saw that with Michigan 2 years ago. We just saw it with Ohio State. We're seeing it thus far with Penn State, but of course they've always come up short in the expectations category. But if they don't win, is it championship or bust? What does James Franklin have to do next season to keep his job? Is it win a championship, get to the playoff, get to the semifinal? What does he have to do?
It has to be, right?
Well, not to win a championship?
It has to be.
No.
You have the best roster returning in college football. The
No
last two
way.
teams that did this and donated all their NIL money to returning their juniors won championships. You're in the same conference. You want to be viewed as Ohio State and Michigan. You bring everyone back using your entire NIL fund. You win a championship or you're a fraud.
But is this like the most pressure like in the media landscape world? Because there's no way Penn State would fire him if he didn't
I
get.
think if they underperform next year, he could certainly be out.
If he didn't,
They're going to be the national championship favorites or second favorites.
If they will be. If they got to the Final Four, that I think
Correct.
that's fine.
Correct.
It's like that's where I think
In terms of firing him, I think there'd be a lot of talk.
Sure. I think that if like the championship or bust for a Penn State just can't be the realistic expectation. I don't care what ranking they have. It just can't be that. And we'll see if I'm wrong next year. But I have a hard time believing they would let that guy go because you don't know what you get if you get away from
true.
James Franklin. So I think James Franklin's fine.
They made great hires. I mean, Jim Knowles is a phenomenal hire. I hate what he did. He left Ohio State to go to Penn State. Absolutely hate it, but he's a great DC. We saw it this year. Saw it for the last few years in Columbus. He's really good at what he does. And I think Kodolnicki gets in his own way a lot. Their offensive coordinator, their play caller. He gets too cute in a lot of situations. If he just dials in, uses the players he has, and plays football instead of double reverse triple passes, I think Penn State's going to be a pretty good team next year. So I do think it's championship or bust in terms of a successful season for Penn State next year. You can't bring back both running backs, Drew Aller, Dennis Sutton, all these guys, and not try to win a championship. So I certainly think so.
Yeah.
The other name I would put on this list, and was shocked that he wasn't, Lincoln Riley at USC.
Yeah.
I can't believe he's not on the top 5 of this list. Lincoln Riley is 26-14 in 40 games at USC. No conference championships. In bowl games, he's 2-1. Who is this guy?
Yeah, I mean certainly he should be on that list.
You have Baker, you have Hurts, you have Kyler, you have Caleb, you have success, and all of a sudden you're a good coach?
Yeah.
I'm not so sure.
Yeah, for sure.
If I had to put our own list together right now, we could all do this, as a little project together. I would put Venables 1. I would put Lincoln Riley 2.
Brian
Who would
Kelly
you
has
put?
to,
I would put Brian Kelly,
Brian
too.
Kelly has to be on there.
So you still put him up there that high?
Yeah,
I would have
has
him,
to be.
Yeah, I'd have him too.
That's fair. I said it's a group list, so I can't just make it my list. So it's a group list. So there's 2 versus 1. So all right. So Venables 1 is his seat the hottest. Is Lincoln Riley 2, or is Brian Kelly 2?
I can go either way on that as long as the other one's 3.
Correct.
All right. I'm a good teammate. Kelly is 2,
Okay.
and I'll put Lincoln Riley 3. And then I guess right now, I'd put Luke Fickell 4. And
I wouldn't post extension. I would have put him higher than 4 pre-extension.
I was going to say same.
just don't think they're gonna fire him.
Yeah, if they're talking about extensions and did extend him now, then they're never going to fire him.
So I'll put Norvell 4. I'll put Norvell
I like
next.
Norvell. You can't go 2-9 and expect to not be on a hot seat.
And then who's at 5 then? Who would we put at 5?
I mean, you can argue James Franklin. I mean, you can argue that. My issue with James Franklin.
You want to put your boy on there?
Scott stinks. But
or do we put Wes?
We can put Wes Miller on there.
I think Satterfield's fair to put at 5. I think
so
we could
too.
put him at 5. From a local perspective.
As not a Bearcats fan, I think he's done a good job this offseason. At least looking at it from the outside.
He's got to win games.
I know, but he's kept everyone that was worth a damn, that was willing to come back here, didn't lose significant transfers, brought in a pretty awesome transfer portal class. I mean, Matthew McDoom at Coastal Carolina was one of the best young corners in all of college football. You bring him up here. I think he's doing something right. If these players want to buy in and come back for another season that could have went to the NFL draft or could have went and got $1 million elsewhere, maybe that's just a great NIL collective. I'm not entirely sure.
I was going to say, I have inside sources that say
it's just a fat check.
I think there's a lot of money going around there. A lot of money.
A lot of Cincy light flowing in the city.
8 total wins in 2 years at the University of Cincinnati. 5 last year and then lost out. So I'm good.
Yeah, so Satterfield at 5.
I like Satterfield.
Is that what we're doing?
At 5.
We can do Satterfield.
That'll look good for the graphic too.
Yeah.
Our top 5, our top 5 coaches on the hot seat that we all just collaborated on, worked together. We have Brent Venables number 1, Brian Kelly coming in at number 2, Lincoln Riley coming in at 3, Norvell out of Florida State at 4, and then our guy Scott Satterfield coming in at number 5. As far as that goes. But my prediction from a year ago was that we would see Luke Fickell return to Cincinnati at some, I think following the footsteps of Frost going back to UCF after not working out at Nebraska. Obviously, I could see the same thing happening, but that contract extension is what threw me. It's one thing for him not to have taken the Ohio State job, but you're right. The extension throws a wrinkle in all of that when it's all said and done.
Oh, yeah.
So who knows?
If
by the way,
any inkling of firing him, they would have just said, go to Columbus.
Correct.
That's at least how I'm reading it.
I'm shocked they didn't.
Right. That's part of the reason we threw him out there.
Yeah.
We thought it was a layup.
Yeah.
All right, well, that wraps it up for us on the radio side. I know you guys.
Real quick.
Yep.
We do have 2 super chats. We have Michael Rolfe, 2 $10 super chats. The first one, not sure if you guys talked about the Yankees beard restriction lift, but can we talk about how insane that rule was? Also, maybe invite Dylan Mitchell. He could use some practice on Papa-Shot. I agree. He should be playing Papa-Shot every single day. We did talk about the Yankees thing. That rule is one of the most nonsense rules in the history of anything.
Did we get confirmation whether or not long hair is allowed?
It didn't say in the thing. I think you still have to keep – it said you have to maintain your beard still. So I imagine it's going to be you have to maintain your hair as well.
You're probably right.
Then we have another $10 super chat from Rolf. Scott Satterfield stinks. As a Louisville fan, I was doing jazzercise. I was so excited he left. I feel for all Bearcat football fans. Yeah, that was the craziest part about the Satterfield hire, that literally Louisville fans begged him to leave. So
it's like when you're in a fantasy draft and you take someone and then the next guy uses like 1 second of his clock.
Yeah.
You're like, shoot, I messed up. Like, they were way too happy.
All right, well, there you go. Appreciate the super chats, by the way. But yeah, can you imagine Aaron Judge with a beard?
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
Glaber grew his out now that he's on the Tigers. Wherever he's at, his media day pictures was with a full beard. It was pretty crazy.
Jake, you went from looking like the guy in You to Jonathan India now. Like you have, the hair's gotten longer since we started the show.
Oh,
you got a Jonathan India. Yeah. So. All right, well, that wraps it up for us on the radio side. Appreciate you guys. We'll do it again next week. We'll have spring training games to talk about.
Ooh. Hopefully no injuries.
No injuries.
Hopefully no injuries.
Please just be healthy.
Maybe a Tee Higgins conversation next week?
Maybe.
I don't know. Just guessing.
We did good. Damn it, Jake. We went 2 hours. Almost 2 hours without mentioning T. It was a goal to see how far into the show. Not bad. That's pretty impressive, actually. So good stuff. We should get Charlie Goldsmith on next week to talk about the possibility of the Reds keeping Ellie De La Cruz and Tee Higgins, right?
That's right.
He would love that.
Yep. All right, guys. Have a good rest of your weekend. Until next week, this has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.
You know what they want, Kenner?
What do they want?
They want to chat power rankings.
Oh my.
And I didn't ask you to prepare this.
Not doing this during the break is a villainous move.
It is.
You
That's
just
a
like
villainous, that's
we
a
were sitting
villainous
here.
move.
So if you want to give, and you don't even have to give a top 5, you can do a Kenner top 3 chat power rankings.
Mount Rushmore?
Or a Mount Rushmore. You can do a Mount Rushmore, the top 4 chat power rankings in your time as the host.
We don't steal bits here.
You don't steal bits. Shut up, pardon my take.
But
Pardon my take.
I never jump in the chat for my mental health.
Correct.
Right? Like for my mental health. So like it would be very difficult to put one of these.
With $30
together. So
today, Michael Rolfe's a distant number 1.
I think
he's
Michael, you have to
easily
put-
number one. He's
Yeah.
number one. It's not even
Run
up for
away.
debate. I mean, he could be 1 and 2.
I think you'd have to put.
you know,
I think for you personally, you'd have to put David Shaw in there as well.
David Shaw
David
is
Shaw's
trying
right
to
at the
help.
top.
for your ranking.
He keeps saying, Kenner, don't fall for this. Don't do it. Don't do it.
don't do what?
The rankings.
If you wanted to get favor with Everett and Mouse Cop, now's your chance.
You put him in there? Yeah.
No, Everett can kick rocks for all I care.
Oh no!
No, so I see Blackmore says Kenner's top 3 chat rankings. I hate everyone in the chat. Don't make me the bad guy here.
No.
Like I what I don't like is when like people can say whatever they want about you, but when you respond, you're the bad guy. That has never made
Well, of
sense.
course.
But
It's always the
no, I
second
don't
guy
hate
that swings
everyone.
that gets the penalty.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
And I don't hate everyone in the chat. Get it right. Everyone in the chat hates me. Like it's you know,
we know how this works. We know how this works.
there you go. So that's what you had planned, Elliot. That was that was
Well, they wanted to chat power rankings. They wanted to chat power rankings. If you're not going to give it to them, I guess I'll try.
Well, then you got to do 40.
I have to do 40.
Top 40.
You guys know that I'm really bad at chat power rankings because I always like to give as many people as possible. I don't
You
like
don't
to
want to
people out.
leave anyone out, which actually makes it worse because then when you have 20 people, whoever's left out feels way worse than whoever the 11th or 6th guy is.
You're right. And I feel like Mark Fetters the LeBron of our chat?
Yeah.
Because like
He's
Mark,
always there. He's always available.
Because not even that. Mark Fetters is, he's like, he should have a lot more MVPs than he does.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
there's the guy.
There's definitely some voter fatigue in off the bench chat power rankings.
There's the guys like Everett and Mouse Cop who are always there, but over the past few months or so, I'm not sure what spawned it, wink, wink, but there has been some negative attitude in the chat a little bit. And you kind of feel that. So the negativity maybe sways the line of who gets in the top of the chat power rankings. So let me see. Yeah, that's true, Mouse Cop. He did. He did.
Well, hold on. No. Hold on. Time out on this because I see a lot of this stuff coming in. They're highlighting a lot of the things I've said. Keep in mind, a lot
Those
of the
were
things I've said
responses.
have been Thank you.
Right.
Oh, so happy that you're here today. Yeah. Like, it's not like people are like, man, Kenner, you're so great. And I'm like, you work at Taco Bell, loser. It's not like that's not what's happening here. That's not what's happening here. People expect to be able to say whatever they want about you, and you're supposed to just take it. I don't play by those rules. So if I'm bad for responding, my bad on that. I'll apologize for that. I'm sorry for letting you call me names, and I'm not allowed to call you names. My apologies as far as that goes. But Molly's mad at me because she just doesn't like my sports opinions. I'm fine with that. That's okay. You cannot like
That's respectable.
My sports
like-
opinions stink too. So
So-
I'm you know who I'm going to do? I'm going to give one chat power. We each give one.
Okay.
Kenner's is Michael Rolfe, so his is always decided.
Of
So it's me
course.
and you. I'll give one out. You know who had a good week this week?
Who had a good week this week?
AJ Worse had a great week.
Wow.
AJ Worse is going to be my pick. AJ Worse, congratulations.
Wow.
You are my chat power ranking winner of the
Congratulations,
week.
AJ.
I'll give it to AJ.
I'm going to give it to my guy.
Who?
My guy, Sean Connor.
Sean Connor.
Sean Connor's getting the nod.
Come on.
I mean, he takes the chat conversation outside of the chat. He's one of the best in the world at what he does. He's just pure nails every time he comes out of the pen. And he always has a good thing to say. So it's going to be Sean Connor. He also said, I'm the Ludwig Aberg of Chatterbox, which is maybe the best compliment I've ever got.
That's a fantastic
It's awesome.
compliment. How about that? I would give everybody in the chat knows I'd probably give him number one if I could. But you know what? I'm going to give it to my guy AJ. AJ's been there since day one. He's been a Zebra zillionaire from day one. So
we
I'm
love
gonna
the
support
chat
him.
like 95% of the time.
Yeah, I do.
Drew Garrison said, I used to frequently live in the ranking until my epic feud with Kenner. He may have feuded with me. I've always found Drew funny as hell. I don't have
Drew.
a problem with Drew.
Yeah, Drew.
But to be fair, a lot of the times these fights always happen in peak Bengals season, and this happens a lot on my show in Dayton. A lot of the people that I pissed them off so bad during the football season, we usually become friends again around the Reds time, around baseball season, and then we start it all over again come football. But yeah, either way, there's some people in here I could tell there will be no seasonal changing of minds. Let's just put it that way.
When how big is Dayton in the fish fry game? I was thinking about that. When do fish fries start? Is for all those Catholics out there? That's got to be coming up soon?
Probably.
I should know that information. I'm pretty sure it's end of February. No,
That sounds right.
it's got to be soon. It's got to be soon.
It's still cold.
Altar Fest is the one I go to every year. That's always like right, in August, right when college football and that fun stuff is kicking off. But there's always like a festival every damn weekend around here. There's like the Strawberry Festival. There's always something random going on. But there's always something to find.
Shout out to St. William Fish Fry, the best. I think that's it.
All right.
That's it.
I just want to shout out fish fries. Next week, Molly
Fish
says
fries rock.
next week. Molly says fish fries are active next week, so I'll see everybody at the fish fry.
I do like me some fish fries.
Mouse Cop. I don't know when Ash Wednesday is. That's my whole thing.
The extent of when I know Ash Wednesday is a Wednesday.
Correct. It's Wednesday, and I see all the ashes
Coming up, and people have ash on their face.
That's what I just needed. I just needed what week. I wish I knew. That's just what Magnificat. Yes, Mouse Cop knows the orders. Reed's a big. I know Reed Mouse is in the chat. He's a big fish fry guy. Maybe we'll go to a fish. Reed always told me he was going to take me to a fish fry.
Have you not been taken?
I want to go to fish fry. Well, because it's obviously I live 45 minutes away, so it's hard. But I'm going to drive over to here to a fish fry. My dad and I always go to a couple fish fries a year. So
Molly and Blackmore both say March 5th.
March 5th. All right. March 5th. That would not be next week, though. I don't know. It doesn't matter. That's it. That's it for Off the Bench. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. Everybody have a very blessed weekend. We have Boxed Lunch.
Box lunch.
Coming up. Give us about 10 minutes or so, and then we will be live for Boxed Lunch for Friday Quiplash. We'll see you guys there.
Thank you, everybody.
Love you all.
Adios.